So, Eric, from what you're saying that because the kids are home and so are you, that you don't find time for formal practice. Was that basically what you were saying?
Uh, right. Yeah, that's very
Okay.
difficult.
Well, for those then that do have a formal practice, um, it being hard, uh, the, this is actually a segue into, well, maybe the practice that you're trying to do is too formal because the real practice would be not the formal practice. Or another way of saying it is, I use the word the three P's. Perhaps you've heard it before, where there is practice, performance, and then play. And that the way of looking at that is that the formal practice is the sitting practice. That's where the kid will play the piano where he doesn't want anybody there, doesn't want his mom to hear, and he's got to work it out for himself. Um, but then when Aunt Susie comes over, Mom wants him to play for Aunt Susie. So now he's actually trying to perform. But later, when he becomes a really skilled musician, now he can actually play music. That performance perhaps means that the child or the musician can play it correctly, but he's got to pay really strong, close attention to every note that he's playing because he's not really founded and secure in it. I've actually seen this on videos of a particular musician when he was young, spotlessly playing Tchaikovsky's violin concerto, and then years later, him playing that same concerto with a different orchestra and a different audience. But now his performance is much better because he knows the piece even better over the years, and that means that now he can actually play it as opposed to perform it. Now, this is what we're getting to, and is that here you have kids in the house, and you can go directly from performance or to from practice right into play. That you can learn to become really playful with them, um, and that to really enjoy your life and enjoy their life with you. That many people think that meditation is um, kind of like an end all into itself, or that if you practice on the cushion or what some people call sits, I don't know where that word came from, um, that that alone is the practice, or that alone is the whole show. But rather, the Buddha talks about it in the sense of learning through seclusion, that we have to get away from the world for a little while so that we can get the world kind of out of the mind slowly. So the first thing we do is we remove the world and go off into seclusion. The next thing that happens is that we get the mind secluded from the world uh, because we're now physically secluded from the world. We become more mentally secluded from the world. Um, and so once we get to that state where we can get the mind secluded from the world um, and are, let us say, skillful with that or used to doing it, then we can go right back into the world without taking on all of the problems of the world. We can literally go back into the world and playfully, have a go at it, rather than um, uh, seeing it as an extension of our sitting practice. So there's actually three phases. The phase of uh, being in seclusion. Some people practice that intensely for long periods of time. I think that The worst case scenario is in Tibet, to where the guys will go off for 3 years. In Thailand, they normally do it for 3 months, but they may do 3 months more than once in their life. But the idea is to get away from it all. Once we get away from it all, physically, then over time it kind of drains out of us. And then we can go back into the world, or if you think of it this way, you can leave the back of the Wat and come up to the front of the Wat without the front of the Wat messing with your mind the way that it did when you were in the front of the Wat before. And so with the kids around, though, you've got an opportunity to short circuit that practice part if you have the mindfulness to do it. In other words, if the kids are rowdy and you don't like it, then the world has come back into the mind in that sense of that you don't like it. If you have the mindfulness there, you can either go in the direction of, oh, I can handle this in the sense of performance, or you can just go get rowdy with them and play. Because actually that's the end goal. The end goal is to have a joyful life. Now that's really, really funny, isn't it? That here we have all of these adults suffering through this religion and that religion, many of them trying to be Buddhist, and really all we're really trying to do is to enjoy life the way that we used to when we were kids, but somehow it got robbed from us. And so if you get unhappy with your kids being rowdy, you're just training them the way that you were trained. But if you allow yourself to go get rowdy with them, then that allows them to stay playful and joyful. And you can gain the very benefit of your meditation immediately. All you need, I guess, is the permission to do that. There's another set of 3 P's which are interesting in that way. And this is protection, permission, and potency. Most adults don't have permission to play with kids. They say somehow in their head for the kids to grim up, to stop having fun, that life is not joyful. And we're trained that way from childhood. So having permission to go back and start playing with the kids and allowing their joy is something that we need to cultivate. To cultivate that permission. It really, really is okay for you to be just as childish as the kids are. And when mom comes in and doesn't like it, you can be joyful and childish and playful with her too. So the permission and the protection is already there because you're in your house. You're not down at the police station being rowdy. That's not the place to do it. You have to figure out that at home that it's okay. And so you have to have that kind of protection, the protected environment. In fact, the protection is the whole reason of the seclusion in meditation, is we want to protect the mind that is in training from the vagaries of the world. Well, when you're at home and close the door, you've already got that. That things are protected. You've got a protected environment, and that protected environment with the Corona-19 situation is true for both. You're playing with the kids, as well as your own private meditation session. But in all cases, the important point is to be on the stick, to be on the ball, to wake up. That's the
Mm-hmm.
sati, to be here now. Because if go ahead.
Um, I, I think that's that's sort of with lots of things that have gone on around the COVID thing. I was a little bit depressed going into it, and then you know, mm, in my department of work, everybody but me got laid off, and and but I found myself sort of falling into where I had maybe had a year of pretty good stable mindfulness and being here now and really having that thread of, you know, right view. And somehow I kind of lost it somewhere. I started falling into habit patterns, although always in the back. I mean, you know, I've got enough experience with Dhamma where it's just going to be something that is going to be something I think about always, I
Mm-hmm.
think. But I did start falling into habit patterns, and part of it was because of, I guess, sort of perceived boredom and um, stuff like that. That sort of, I think I lost the thread of because uh, because I'd fall into a habit pattern, and I would sort of blame. I would be like, well, this is okay because you know, it doesn't matter. Um, I can still be mindful and fall into this habit pattern, but I think and also there was no reason to feel guilty about it. Whereas before I would feel guilty, right? There was the guilt there, and now the guilt cycle has sort of been depleted. So I'm like, well, what is my reasoning for not falling into the habit pattern? Since I don't have guilt, what's my reasoning? And that's how I lost the thread, I think. Whereas it's not about falling into the habit pattern, it takes me out of enjoying the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's and that's kind of what I'm trying to pull myself out of. But
Okay.
you know,
Yes, I do. When you use the word guilt, um, I generally associate that back with Freudian and Byrne psychology in the sense that guilt is what an individual will feel when his own parent ego state is telling him to go do something and he doesn't want to do it. Now, normally that parent ego state, which is also the Buddha would call that sila bhatta paramasa. It's the shoulds that we have, and that the point about the guilt is that um, whatever the super ego or the parent ego state is telling you to do, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Okay, that's the interesting point. You don't want to do it. Okay, if you don't want to do it, then we say no. I don't want to do it, and that's where the guilt comes from. But we need to look at that whole point about we don't want to do it, and yet the parent is saying you should do this. Uh, Brings us back to the whole world that we have been looking at as a two-step operation. In other words, if joy is the intended result or C, then and we are at point A. To get to point C, we've got to go do something called B. And if we go from A to B, then from B we can get to C. But the whole teaching of the Buddha is no, we're going to go from A to C directly. This is a direct path. This is not a meandering around kind of thing, which means that the guilt is saying you've got to go to B. All right, that's what it's saying. All right, A, you're at A and you've got to go to B, which in this case is possibly sitting practice. But the outcome is to go to C, which is having a joyful moment, having a joyful life, enjoying what's happening right now. And so, if you can, in fact, rechange the way that we think about sitting meditation is from getting something out of it into enjoying it for itself. Then the sitting and the postures and all of that become less and less important. The formalities come out of it. And the actual intention or the actual object of going directly to C is now the way of operation. In other words, going back to the kids and then back to enjoying the kids. And you said something that I think very, very strange. At one point in the conversation, you were talking about the kids being at home and how hard it is to practice when the kids are at home. And then on the other statement, you were saying that this is boring. Being at home is boring.
Boring moments.
Boring moment.
Well, you know,
Are
say
the kids
after.
bored?
No, the kids aren't bored.
Well, what are they doing that's not boring that you're doing that is boring?
Yeah, it's really after the kids go to bed, I guess. You know, I think, what do I do? I'm still awake. You know, that would probably be a good time to practice, but you know, it's not time for me. So then I just find something else to do to sort of occupy my time. I think.
So is that your point in life, is to occupy time? Or would a better point in life to be is to enjoy your time, to enjoy your moment?
Yeah. That's what I want.
All right. Well, let's remember that then. Let's start to practice that. That it really is difficult for Westerners to get out of that two-step process and go into the direct path.
Yeah.
Go directly from A to C without having to pass go.
Yeah. I think that there's the subtle dissatisfaction comes into it. You know, just sort of, and also there's part of it where I thought I had kicked this. You know, when you think, oh, I thought I had kicked this thing, and here it is back, and I'm finding myself in the same old swamp, and you know, and
I don't know if you were a member of that group, but several months ago, it seemed like a huge rash. I think it was right before the Corona-19 virus, where a whole bunch of old students were all having the same issue at the same time, in the sense of they thought that they had licked this, which is the way that you were saying it. Let's put it this way. Because both of you've got a beard right now. If either one of you were to go shave your beard, that would be tough. The first time that we shave, after having not shaved for a long time, it dulls the razor. We have to possibly use 2 or 3 of them. The skin is irritated, etc. And in fact, that first shave is generally not even a close shave. that it's only the second or the third shave. Now, here's one of the things that has that quality too, that over time you have been shaving so that you've gotten fairly good at being able to shave. And yet, it doesn't matter how good you get at shaving, the hair is going to keep growing back. It's going to keep growing back. And here the meditation student is looking in the mirror and looking at that razor and saying, darn, I'm an expert at shaving. Why does the beard keep growing back? You get where I'm coming from. Okay, so now let's look at basically what's going on here. We're talking about the instinctual ways that we live that come right out of our DNA, on top of the childhood training in those instincts before wisdom ever set in. So children get really messed with. They get messed with first by their DNA, and then they later get messed with by society. And so there's like two layers of crap in there. And that when we begin to to pull over one of the layers of the crap, which is the learned behavior that we got from society and our parents, we still have the instincts, and that we're not going to be able to destroy those instincts. In fact, you don't even want to. You want to keep the self-preservation instinct there because it's kept you alive several times in your life, maybe dozens of times, and it will keep you alive again. So you do not want to completely destroy the mechanism of the instincts. Destroy the mechanism of the instincts was very much like bringing the face to the point where it doesn't grow hair anymore. David, where did you go?
Hello?
Something's gone here.
You still with me? Seems like someone's sharing their screen. Hmm. Oh,
there we go. All right, we're back now.
Yeah.
About the shaving, it's a great analogy. Because I think that for a long time I was like, I felt great and really didn't need anything, any major habit pattern that I used to have. I didn't need it because I was just here in the here now and I was fine. But then, like you said, it starts growing back, and if it's like I got caught off guard because yeah, let's say I was involved politically and it was very depressing, and that was depressing on top of other things, you know. And I've realized I made some mistakes there, but I think you can let it get so long that you kind of forget what your face looks like, if you know what I'm saying. And then
yeah,
and then you start shaving, you're like, oh, you know, what was I thinking?
I like that. Yes, that's exactly how we do it. But getting back into shaving again, or recognizing that no matter how many times I do shave and clean things off, it's got to be done again. That's one's right effort. Now, the right effort is going to get easier if we maintain it, but if we have any breaks in there, then we've got to start over again with our right effort. And I don't know of anyone who doesn't take breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody takes breaks. They get really, really good at it for a while, and then they think that they've gotten something, and so they quit putting in the time and the effort, and then all the stuff comes back again. That's just normal. Um, the question is, can we then re-engage? Can we get back into it? The answer is, well, we got into it the first time and got pretty good at it. Therefore, getting back up to that level should be fairly easy. But those thoughts about, oh my goodness, I thought that I was over that and now I'm not over it, that's actually a painful thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's painful to say. I thought I was over that and now I find that I'm not. That basically it's like out of sight, out of mind. And with that out of sight, out of mind, that's the reason, in fact, we could say that seclusion is very valuable, is to get out of sight of the world so that we can get the hindrances of the world out of. In other words, if a drill sergeant is yelling in your face, it's pretty hard to remember to breathe and to do anapanasati. So you got to get off into seclusion. But there is I think you've heard me talk about this before. There's a major connection between seclusion and sila. That when we are in seclusion, generally our behavior is perfecto. When you're all sitting alone and the kids are in the other room, then you're unlikely to be yelling at them or spanking them.
I try not
Or
to do
yell.
that anyway.
Right. Okay. So that's the whole point of seclusion, is to get away from it all so that we can then begin to get that stuff out of the mind. We get it out and then we get it out of the mind, but we're not going to be living in a situation where we can get away from it all the time. And that even those monks who go off and in seclusion, it still takes them kind of a building up period. For instance, those monks in Tibet that go spend 3 years, those are not new monks. These are monks who have been monks for 10 or 20 years before they go to do a 3 year silent retreat. Why? Because most, I think, would go, most people that I know of, if you put them in solitary confinement for 3 years, they'd go stark raving mad. That's important to look at in the sense of prisons. Putting people in solitary confinement is supposed to be the very worst thing that you can do to punish a person. Isn't that the way that they normally look at it in jurisprudence in the U.S.? Is putting somebody in solitary confinement is the very worst thing that you can do to them. And yet you guys are both saying, solitary confinement doesn't sound so bad, does it? Well, it depends upon how much it is. Because if it's years, then um, we have to either take the skills in there with us or learn to develop those skills so that we can, in fact, not get bored. That we are, in fact, can work directly with the joy and work directly with the here now so that we have a marvelous life, regardless of the amount of social input that we have. But the important point is not going into that seclusion, ever how long it is. The point is when we come out of it, like coming back with your family or going back to work or living our lives, can we now take the skills that we have developed while we were in seclusion and put them into everyday use? The answer is, for most people, generally no. And here's the reason why, is that each one is two different separate environments. Being in seclusion, almost, let us say, at least in a way, and for Dhammas dudes for sure, it almost pushes us into correct practice. The only thing to do is to either go nuts or to go happy. Those are the choices. We're either going to practice right or we're going to get bored and go into worse. But when we come back out of that practice time, now it's like we go right back into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard then to regain the original skills that we had. This is why mindfulness is so important to practice, not just while on the sitting cushion, but all throughout the day. That mindfulness is the trick. Or I actually don't like the word mindfulness so much. I prefer the word Pali sati, because mindfulness doesn't really have the quality of wake up. And yet that's the major quality of sati, is to, wake up, look at what you're doing. And inspect the mind for just a moment. That's the first thing that we do, is we recognize, and for the very, very beginning student, we would say to wake up to that the mind has wandered away from the breath. But really what we're talking about is that the mind has wandered away from the here now, and that the breath is our first anchor to get us to be in the here now. So when we're in the here now, that's the object, because when we're in the here now, we have total choice over how we're going to feel. If we're in the past and if we're in the future, if we're stuck in our old ways, then we don't have such good choice. But when we're in the here now, we can choose better how we feel. Now, how many people do either one of you know that if this person had the choice, would choose intentionally with right resolve to feel bad? Nobody. Nobody intentionally chooses to feel bad. Everybody who would have an opportunity to make a decision about how they're going to feel would feel joyful, would feel good, would feel happy, would feel satisfied.
The only example I could think of would be, I can think of times, especially when I was a teenager, where I would wallow in some sort of self-pity, or after a breakup, you listen to like sad songs and you sort of wallow in your unhappiness. That's the only thing I could think of. Which,
That's
yeah.
kind of funny, because yes, I know what you mean, but now when I listen to sad songs, it makes me feel very happy. Even if I cry, it's the tears for joy. Oh, that's so beautiful. Um, but that's still your choice. Your
Mm-hmm.
choice is, are you going to feel bad or are you going to feel good? And yet, very few of us even recognize that we've got that choice. Well, you don't have it when there's no sati. As soon as we wake up, now we have that choice. The choice would either be to stay awake and do something marvelous with that awakeness, or to go back to sleep. And when I say back to sleep, here is what I mean: it back into the old patterns that we have developed that operate automatically. But when we're awake, we can choose how we're going to feel. David, if you could choose how you wanted to feel, how would you feel?
I feel great. All the time.
I'm not sure about all the time, but we can talk about it to remember. So whenever you remember to feel good, that's how you'd feel, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because otherwise, Eric's going to get a hold of it, and he says, well, there was a moment when I didn't feel good, and now I'm going to feel guilty about not feeling good. Yeah, that issue about all the time is a dangerous one for Westerners. It sets up a perfection standard that no one can meet. and therefore gives us all permission to feel bad because I caught myself being bad, therefore I'm a bad person, and all we go down in that spiral of hair. And so that sati is the key, and that can be practiced regardless of the situation. In fact, being at home is an excellent time to keep practicing sati, to keep waking up to this present moment over and over and over again. And so this is why we use those tools about using the stretching of the hand and how we grasp objects. We start paying close attention to what our hands are doing. We start using the chair. I think both of you have had me talk about uh, uh, building sati throughout the day. Okay, this is an important time to really practice those kinds of things because you've got the opportunity to do it, and that these skills that you're developing are the time that it takes is not interfering with your normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Because you sit down in chairs and you get up out of chairs on a regular basis. You're out there using your hands on a regular basis. Now let's pay close attention to what the hands are doing. Why? Because this is wakefulness. Whatever it is that keeps us in the present moment, that's a doorway into the fuller present moment. So if we begin to start watching the breath is in the present moment. We can then expand that present moment from just the breath into the whole body, or we can do it through the hands. That is sort of like a doorway into the present moment is something like watching the hands, watching the breath, being here with the body will begin to then open up our senses in general. It is actually the tactile and proprioceptive senses that we have that are not really well used. We don't pay much attention to them. But paying attention to the posture of the body, paying attention to the movements of the hand, those movements are not touch, they're not tactile, they're proprioceptive. So beginning to watch how we move our hands and where our hands are is a very good door for opening up to being in the present moment. This is an excellent skill. The Buddha talks about it in Satipatthana Sutta, number 10, of reaching, grasping, uh, touching, sitting, walking, going to the toilet, mindfully going to the toilet is actually part of the sutta, of doing everything slowly and carefully, noting every little thing that's going on is the way to start living, to be in the here now, and that with that we have the opportunity to make the change or to make a choice. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is really, really big on that idea of a choice. And talks about it in the sense the choice is yours. You can either go by karma or you can go by choice. When we say karma, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa here is referring to not necessarily the law of karma, but referring to that old actions had old results that built up old habits.
You're conditioning inertia,
Right.
essentially. Yeah.
And that conditioning inertia, along with you waving your hand in a circle, is the Pali word for that is samsara.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The old samsara that just keeps rolling on because we're not woke up to what's happening. We just let it roll on, basically rolling on down the hill. But when we wake up, when we train ourselves for wakefulness, Now we have a choice at any particular moment. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is also very big on waking up at the point of contact so that we know how we feel. And being around kids is a really, really excellent point for that, because generally the kids are going to be doing something or making noise that the adult doesn't like. So there's great opportunity for recognizing the feeling of not liking, to wake up to that, because really the right way that you want to treat your kids is to not go around being dissatisfied with them. You want to go around being satisfied with them. And so this is a point in time to wake up when we recognize, oh, I'm just being dissatisfied with the kid. Maybe one of them's having a tantrum. And generally when the kid has a tantrum, what does mom do? She has her own tantrum. She has her tantrum too. Why? Because she doesn't wake up to how the kid is operating. I saw it years ago in the grocery store, where the kid is sitting in the little child section of the grocery cart, and mom makes the huge mistake of going down the cereal aisle. That's just a huge mistake on mom's part, because now the kid is going to want this, that, the other thing on the way, and kids can get really loud about what it is that they want. So this kid was throwing a real tantrum, and the mom just did not know what to do. One of the possibilities is give the kid what he wants. Another one would be to pick the child up out of that grocery cart, get close to the child, and start talking about something else. And maybe just leave the grocery cart and come back at a later time after the child is settled down. But in this particular case, this woman was so freaked out that she actually walked away from her child, which was the worst thing to do, because now the child is really going to start screaming. And now that the child is really screaming, now the mom doesn't want to come anywhere close to that kid. And so the question would be for you, when you get yourself into a situation to where the child is doing something you don't like, what are you going to do? Are you going to wake up? Are you going to behave the way that you would have ordinarily behaved when confronted with a kid doing something you don't like? If we could say, wake up, I can treat this situation differently. I've got choices here. I don't have to go excuse me, along with this feeling of not liking. I can change it instead. In fact, once we wake up at that point, when we wake up, we can say, I do have a choice here. I can treat this child with joy. I do not have to treat this child the way that I was feeling a moment ago or a second ago. I can choose how I'm going to feel. This is what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is talking about, the choice. Well, and so to not wake up, there's no choice but to go with the old way of doing it, the old karma, the old way. But if you can wake up, now you can choose how you're going to feel. By choosing how you feel, how are you going to feel? It's your choice. Good. You can feel the way you want to feel if you remember that you have that choice to feel the way that you want to feel.
Just remembering.
Exactly.
There's just, I feel like there's sati on all different scales. There's a long scale. There's a and my state of mind, it goes in. There's small cycles. There's a cycle that my mind goes through in the day. is a cycle that my mind goes through in a year. I feel like I can think, and or in a few months, and waking up from a longer period of sort of not being awake, or um, yeah, and I feel like that. I don't know what all plays into being able to wake up, after you've let yourself slip into a groove of samsara for a month or 2 months or 3 months. But it feels like I thought, well, this is easy. I'll always know this. It's top of my mind. I can just be in the moment here now. But then you slip out of it for a few months and you forget that how exactly did I do that? And but
It hasn't been a few months, though, has it? It's only been a few weeks since you called, so.
Well, varying degrees of sort of just being. It's hard to say, because I feel like I go through cycles anyway. I go through cycles of being more and more awake, and like you said, everybody takes a break. But I can see a direct correlation between taking a break, which is what I called myself doing, taking a break, and being not mindful, being not present, not being in control of the way I felt. Now, the equanimity, or the ability to be peaceful about things, is there, and to not be guilty. That's the main thing that I've still maintained. But then I start feeling guilty about not guilty, but guilty of not knowing what to do without guilt, being lost without guilt. Like, how do I orient my life without guilt? How do I orient my life? What should I be doing? That's the question. What should I be doing? What do I do?
I think your Arkansas training is showing there. Let me ask that to David. David, do you feel guilty?
Ever?
Yeah, first off, the question would be, were you raised in New York?
No.
Where were you raised?
Mostly Miami, Florida.
Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay.
Okay. Are you saying New Yorkers don't feel guilty about anything?
Not to the same degree.
Yeah.
And some do. It depends upon circumstances. For instance, Hasidic Jews of New York are fairly well guilt-ridden.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Catholics too. Yeah.
And Catholics, right? Boy, the Catholics have got a good dose of it. But raised in the southern United States has an element of guilt built into the society.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I'd actually go into that just a little bit.
Sure.
In the Pali, there are two words, Hari and Opata. Hari has the quality of embarrassment. Opata has more the quality of actual guilt. So let's define those this way. When we have Hari, or let us call it also shyness, is that we do not want to be seen by others. The embarrassment is we don't want to get caught with our wrongdoing. This is generally the feelings that people have Uh, you could call it actually even sociopathic. That it's okay to do it so long as I can get away with it. It's okay that I did that, but it's not okay if I get caught doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a difference between shoplifting versus getting caught shoplifting. The shoplifter who has embarrassment doesn't want to get caught at it, but the individual or the child who feels guilty doesn't want to do the shoplifting. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, he's got a bad feeling inside about how bad he will be if he does the wrong thing. So both of these are actually ordinary states of mind. That there's when one becomes noble, there's a new way of looking at it, and that new way of looking at it is through the lens of the Four Noble Truths about suffering or dukkha, and the end of dukkha means that we do not want to do anything that causes dukkha, because now our entire modus operandi is to come out of suffering, to stop doing the things. And so this one has a whole lot more honesty built into it. This is, in fact, the really honest way of looking at it. I don't want to do it because my full new intention is to be free from the suffering that is associated not with the results of having done something, but also the doing of it itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the doing of it, which causes suffering, as well as the end result. So in the beginning, um, much of the stuff that we have would be embarrassment. An example of that would be the student who is in a meditation retreat will go to the retreat sitting and go sit with everybody else because he does not want to have to deal with the embarrassment of one of the volunteers going around and checking to see who's not in the meditation hall.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people will sit in the meditation hall out of a feeling of shyness or embarrassment. But the real point about being there is to practice the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some of them then will go and do the meditation out of shyness for not being there, but they're really not practicing very well because their intention is to avoid getting caught,
Yeah.
not avoid not doing. So another example of that is having someone else do your homework or your copy your homework, not because of the right way of looking at it, but you're shy. You don't want the teacher to know that you didn't do the homework.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of society is built on this kind of shyness or this kind of embarrassment, to where real guilt has the quality of, I don't want to do that. And if I have done it, then I want to make it up. I want to make amends.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what we're looking now is to try to convert the shyness or the embarrassment into real guilt. But when we're practicing the Dhamma, especially when we get fairly good at it, we're no longer operating either out of shyness or guilt. We're actually operating out of wisdom. And the
Right.
wisdom is that I'm going to uh, live my life according to avoidance of harming myself and others, including all of my wrongdoing. So if someone at that level is then makes a wrongdoing, makes a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
screws up at the watch, gets into an argument, does something like this, then uh, as a Dhamma dude, he wants to confess that. He wants to get it over with. He wants to fix it up. He wants to get it right. But he does that in a joyful way. It's not like that he has to feel remorse. And so that issue of remorse is something that we have to look at because, in fact, both shyness and or Harry and Opata guilt have remorse built into it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wish I hadn't have done it because I made a big mistake and I messed up a lot of stuff versus I don't want to do it because I don't want to see, I don't want other people know what a bad person I am, would be a way of
Yeah.
looking at it from the shyness. But through wisdom, we really want to confess, we really want to be that open because our intention now is freedom from suffering, including the freedom of the guilt and the shyness, because both of these are feelings that are of no value. So I invite you to change the feelings of guilt into wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
That whether you're, so an example would be that you feel guilty because you're not sitting in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whenever that thought comes up, right then and there, this is the part that's so funny, is right then, it's wake up time. If you're feeling guilty because you're not practicing, then practice right this very minute. Wake up and see that guilt, and to say, I don't have to feel guilty because I'm practicing right now. I'm gladdening the mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by doing that, you
Yeah.
immediately change that point. But if you feel guilty, oh, I haven't meditated for 30 minutes, oh, I haven't meditated for a day, oh, I haven't meditated for 2 days, etc., like that,
Yeah.
is just being stuck in that old way of thinking.
Right.
The shyness would be, oh, well, I haven't meditated for 2 days, but I'm not going to tell Dhammarato. Okay, so you can
Yeah.
see that one's externalized and the other one is internalized, but both of them are a form of dukkha. And that you can deal with the wrongdoing in a joyful way. Get it off your
Mm-hmm.
chest, but that doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Yeah, right. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of where I'm getting to now, where I'm sort of breaking down that, you know, so that's the subtle form of ego that doesn't want to really talk about all the crap you've done, and you attach, you're attaching your wrongdoing somehow to yourself, and over time, and it's the same thing of, oh, I thought I got over that, and then you feel like, oh, well, I'm not the person I thought I was, but really I'm not anything. You know, I'm just trying to be happy. um, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, and being able to work through that stuff without having any sort of guilt or feeling about having an attachment to some continuous thing that keeps going, that everybody judges, and you know, um, who cares? Who cares what concepts people have about me? They're all different, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all skewed to their own viewpoint. So
Yes, allowing other people to have their viewpoint uh, without us getting caught in it. That's
mhm,
actually, um, at that particular moment in time, the eradication of shyness or embarrassment. That in fact, we want other people to have a good opinion of us because them having a poor opinion of us is embarrassing. Ultimately, if I'll get thrown out of the nest, or I'll get
mhm,
ostracized, or I'll be out of the community. Um, And so we have that kind of instinctual system at the bottom of both Harry and Opata, or both shyness and guilt. But neither one of them are of much value when it comes to practicing anapanasati. That waking up to the guilt, that's practicing anapanasati, waking up to that shyness, to recognize that, oh, you have a choice about how you're going to feel on your own. And you do not have to follow the lines of the orders that we got from the past that we've stored in the superego. We don't have to follow that or not follow it and feel guilty. That we can recognize, oh, that's just a superego. That's just all those old rules, right ways of doing it, and other things like that. To where really your job is not to, you know, meditation retreats are full of rules. No books, no cell phone, no recorder, no paper, no pencil, no talking, no talking. And then you sit down and here's all of these rules about what to do and the schedules and all of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny how anybody gets anything out of meditation at all in a retreat that has all those rules with it. But basically, what the rules are doing is setting up an environment that's free from all of the stuff that we used to spend our time with. It's all of our time structuring things so that the mind is then left with nothing to do other than follow the instructions of the teacher. So the advanced meditator who is going to go into that retreat is going to kind of follow along with the rules, but it's not because he's following the rules. He is there because he's just merely enjoying the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
But getting to that state is quite advanced. That most people are going to go through Harry and Opata. Oh, I've got to go. Oh, I want something out of this meditation. I got to get up out of bed and go sit. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty laying in bed. And all of this other kind of stuff that's going on. And everything, remember, is in the moment. Everything is right now. So if the guy is laying in bed at skipping his meditation session in the retreat and feels guilty, and doesn't know that he's feeling guilty, he's missing an opportunity to practice right then and there. But if he wakes up and recognizing how he does feel, he might, in fact, then start doing a walking meditation over to the meditation hall and come in 30 minutes late. That's okay, too. There's no problem with any of that. The problem is, what do people think about me? And also this issue of, am I doing it right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Harry and Opata both are hindrances.
And I think there's a huge emphasis, or there's, when I was getting into this, any of this stuff, there's like this huge sort of the way that I was attracted to it is this promise of, oh, well, this is going to fix you for good, and you're going to be perfect, like that. Once you're awakened, you're perfect and you're enlightened and you're not going to make any more mistakes. Something to that effect. I don't think there's enough, and like you said, there's no. You go to the silent retreat. It's silent for 10 days. They don't teach you how to go out into the real world and sort of take what you've learned and integrate it.
Well, some do, but they only spend about an hour doing it. Perhaps the right way to do it is to relax the rules for the last 2 days completely, so that then the students would have a chance of learning how to practice their meditation while they're not in such a heavy retreat setting.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things to play with it, and I'm a big fan of the retreats. The retreats have enormous value to help students get started in a regular practice. But the regular practice is only going to be as beneficial as how much they can incorporate that practice throughout their day.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we're doing a meditation retreat, supposedly we're doing it throughout the day. But that's really, really hard for a new beginner. And so they wind up doing a lot of misery and a lot of suffering, the kind of suffering that they would do if you just merely put them in an isolation chamber in the back of a prison in a solitary confinement without giving them the proper instructions.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in fact, the students in the retreat, when they're suffering, they're not following the instructions. And so this is why we look at it from the position of sati is the most important one. To wake up, to keep waking up, and to wake up, whether you're sitting on the floor, or whether you're driving your car, or whether you're reading a book, or whether you're having a conversation with someone, or you're about to have a conversation with someone. The whole point is, let's do it in the here now. Let's wake up. You probably know that in the United States, the number of automobile accidents is very high. Why is that? Because people are not watching where they're going. I think that has a lot to do with the rule of thumb is right of way. This is my road. This is my lane. I'm in my lane. I'm good. And so then they go to sleep, just like you're talking about. I've done what I needed to do, and now this lane is mine, and I'm good to go, and so I can forget all about it. That causes accidents. The right way to drive is to really be here now. Yes, I'm in the right lane. Let's make sure I'm in the right lane. Where in Thailand, they have a completely different philosophy about it, and that the philosophy here is share the road. Now, sharing the road here means you've got to watch where you're going, because anybody can dart right out in front of you at any particular point in time. That if you've got two cars coming one after another, and you've got another car coming this way, more than likely we're going to make 3 lanes. And so the guy who's in this lane, he's got to move over to let this other traffic go, because one's going to try to pass the other right at the worst possible moment. It's just Rome is very famous for this kind of driving. I just had a chat with a student who says, "Well, I don't have any trouble in Rome at all." And I says, "Yeah, but do you drive a taxi in Rome?" He said, "No way." Why? Because the traffic situations in some places, you have to really, really stay alert. You got to watch what you're doing. This is in that regard, this is the right way to live our lives, is to watch what we're doing. Keep watching where we're going, because at any moment, if we're unmindful, there can be a catastrophe. There can be an accident of some kind or another. And so this is where mindfulness then becomes our primary point of reference. Okay, going back to that accident, like if I'm not mindful, then the accident that I will make is when the kid starts crying, I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't like it. That's my accident. Why? Because if I am mindful of that and I see that or hear that child crying in the ears, I'm going to make the proper arrangements, like I was driving my life, so that I'm not going to cause any trouble. And so this is why mindfulness is so valuable. Once we get that habit of it. We want to keep it and maintain it and build on it.
Yeah.
All throughout the day, so that we can have it at the point of contact. Whenever feelings begin to arise, we want wisdom to be there. We want that sati to be right in place, because now we can operate through wisdom. Otherwise, we're going to make a mistake, and then we got a choice of either the Harry or Opata. I'm either going to be embarrassed and try to hide it from everybody else, or I'm going to feel guilty about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is actually quite subtle. It was years before I understood, when I heard about Harry and Opata. And then the third way, I never quite heard how people would describe that third way until Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talked about it. That there has always been that knowing of there's three ways to handle it. Harry is embarrassment, Opata is guilt, and this new way is joyful wisdom. That, yeah, we're going to go through life and we're going to make mistakes. The question is, can you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and boogie on down the road? Are you going to hide in the ditch hoping that nobody sees you?
Yeah.
Are you going to feel guilty about being in the ditch?
Yeah. I think I'm starting to feel like that I like the accidents, because it's just, it's just part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to accept that. Just let it happen. That's kind of the only, yeah.
David, back to what you said a while ago about always or all the time. This this is at that point. That if we can recognize we're not going to be doing it always or all the time, that's almost like perfection. That the mind is the mind. We are we're animals. We can accept that. We make mistakes on a regular basis, all the time. The question is, how are we going to handle them? Are we going to handle these mistakes with Harry, with Opata, or with Panna? I just had a thought a while ago about the path and the ditch, and that we can see that what is the ditch? The ditch is, in fact, our personality. Who we think we are, or when people have no practice of the Dhamma, then their definition of self then would be the ditch, and that the path is coming out of the ditch and living our lives moment by moment as best we can out of the ditch, knowing that we're probably going to be going right back into the ditch.
Yeah, I've been thinking about over efforting. I feel like my sati is actually quite good, that I'm almost always aware of how I'm feeling. And it gets frustrating sometimes when I can't make the connection from A to C. Like, and it's like, I know it's possible. I've done it before. What's the movement? Like, it's a certain mind movement that gets triggered, that seems to create that flip. And I'm not always able to get it right, and so it's yeah. I don't know if you have any thoughts or wisdom to share on that, of how to make that flip when I think it has something to do with effort and trying too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you were talking, the thought came, joyful screw up. Can we learn to live our lives as a joyful screw up?
Okay.
Because you're not going to stop the screwing up.
All right.
That life is like that.
Yeah.
And there's a dozen different opinions about how we can screw up. In other words, one man's perfect behavior is another guy's screw up.
Yeah.
And so we're bound to do that we are human. We do screw stuff up. Can we be joyful as we see the screw ups? Because we're going to continue to screw up. That enlightenment is not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
That nothing is perfect. And when we expect perfection from ourselves, then we're going to feel bad, and then we're probably not going to be mindful. That we will fall back into personality on a regular basis.
I know this is just completely like common sense anapanasati, but breathing to me is anytime I've ever been stuck in a rut, the breathing has been the key to get out of it. I feel like I can always directly associate a moment with breathing, whether it be just brute force, breath work, or paying attention to the breath.
Yes, so we knew that's an important point to keep bringing up. When we're talking about right effort, there's actually two aspects of it. One is the gladdening of the mind, and the other one is the taking of the breath. They could be both done together at the same time, more or less, over a period of a couple, 3, 5 seconds. But both of these things are part of the practice. To take that deep breath, to get the mind going again, to throw out the remnants of whatever junk that's in the blood, and to gladden the mind in the sense of throwing out whatever it was that was in the mind. And so constantly coming back to this remembering, to take that deep breath and remembering to gladden the mind and be happy. This is the point of sati that needs to be rehearsed, practiced, gone over and over and over again, as if this is like the new lifestyle. Rather than the new lifestyle is to be perfect. No. The new lifestyle is to joyfully stumble our way through life. Because you're not going to stop stumbling.
Yeah, there are moments where it feels like I really want something more out of the moment, and then there are other moments where it's really uh, like I'm just like really soaking it in and really just liking the moment. Um, and
For me, I struggle with that. Being in the moment is really, it's not something that the memory can have. Like your memory wants to have it. It wants to have the moment. Some part of you wants to own it, but you can't. You can only just fall into it and enjoy it completely, like you're in a bath, like you're just getting in a bathtub.
Right. I
And
was
that
using
warmth.
the mental image of the ocean. I can go swimming in the ocean, but I can't own it. But that's true even in the bathtub or even in the shower, that you can be in that shower, but you can't own it. You can't own that moment. But if we have an experience, then that experience can be reflected upon so that we can build upon it.
Yeah.
And so our satisfaction becomes more satisfying over time.
Mhm.
But satisfaction is satisfaction. We cannot practice being dissatisfied, hoping that satisfaction is going to be the result. It doesn't happen that way. We have to practice satisfaction. When that dawned on me, it was like, my goodness, for 10 years or more, I've been practicing wrongly. Doing A to get B so that C would happen. No, practice being happy immediately. Practice being satisfied. Practice being a winner.
Mm-hmm.
So for
And
me,
that whole idea of the job well done, what was the job? Throwing the hindrances out, changing what we've got in the mind, throwing the guilt out, throwing whatever it is, that's all the job that needs to be done. And by throwing it out and by having that job well done, we're successful.
Guys, I gotta go. But great talk. Great talk.
bye-bye.
See you guys.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye, Dhammarato.
I know you got babies.
Um, yeah. Things have been how's your health, by the way?
The neck is much better.
Oh, good.
I went to the doctor, and the doctor gave some cream and some pills. I'm much more interested in the cream. It's got heavy duty wintergreen in it. It burns. It really burns. Even in fact, this happened last night. Is that I was touching the neck where I had put that medicine on it, and there was not much medicine at all left. I mean, it was like it was gone. But after I touched that, then I tasted my finger, and that wintergreen was still like strong taste. It lasts and lasts on the skin.
Yeah.
So that was the change. But the doctor, we talked about a lot of stuff. One was, do I want a collar? The answer is no. I can hold my own neck still, thank you. But the important point was stop having the Thai massages.
Oh, really?
Because I'd had 3 massages by then, and all the massages is all about moving the head and getting it going and all of that kind of stuff. And no, the doctor says, let it heal. Sit, be still.
Mhm.
Don't move the neck. And since I stopped moving it 2 days ago, it's gotten much, much better. But for the 3 days that I was having the Thai massages, it was getting worse and worse and worse.
Mhm.
To the point that it was just chronic pain. It was both acute and chronic. Hard to sleep and whatnot like that. But change of course and change in medicine, it was all that it took. And so, as you can see, I'm still holding it fairly still, but I don't have a lot of movement anyway. But thanks for asking. Yeah, the neck is actually much better right now. I've been able to make it through this whole conversation without having to pay any attention to it at all.
Okay, good. Yeah, so as far as my practice, sometimes I've been feeling like combination of like over efforting and feeling like I have so many options of what I like should be doing in the moment, in terms like should I be focusing on my whole breath? Oh, maybe I should do metta. Oh, let's do a little bit of it's just like so yeah, it's very very stressful with that. Like I want uh and
There
so
is, as I remember it, there is, I forget which one it is, but there is a tarot card that has the man in the lower middle, while the whole area above his head is filled with options.
yeah.
And he's got all of these various options of things that he can do,
Mm-hmm.
and that because he can't make up his mind, he's really not doing any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So Anapanasati can feel like that
Mm-hmm.
until we recognize, no, this is much more of an integration rather than a separation and picking out. An example would be like on the piano, learning a particular passage. It's good to slow down and to make sure that the fingering is done exactly right, and then you begin to speed it up. They
Mm-hmm.
do that, by the way, with martial arts and all kinds of things too.
Mm-hmm.
But once that passage is now up to scratch and can be played, now it just is incorporated into all of the rest of that piece of music. Okay. So basically, what you're beginning to look at is that your life is actually a song.
Mm-hmm.
Your life is a playful piece of music, and we don't have to get stuck on any one particular note. That we just move from note to note
Mm-hmm.
happily,
Mm-hmm.
without feeling guilty about it. Because in fact, what we were talking about with Eric about the feeling guilty. If I'm doing A and then I think, oh, I should be doing B. Now I'm not doing A and I'm not doing B. I'm feeling guilty about not doing B.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
always the answer to that question would be, what do I do next? The answer is wake up, take a deep breath, and stop thinking about what I should be doing, and instead just enjoy the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That the skills that we need to be developed are the skills on the Eightfold Noble Path. The skills of Anapanasati are secondary,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that rapture or piti, the feeling of success, is the automatic outcome of the practice of right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were going to choose what kind of attitude that you would have, would you have the would you choose to have the attitude of a failure, a victim, or you would have the
No,
attitude
no,
of,
no, 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 no. I mean, sometimes even in my sits, I spend time like it's just my it's my sits have been like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like just jumping around doing like a bunch of different things that it seems like getting into first jhana is not happening because I'm not building any sort of like unification around like a particular theme. Um, so,
well, the
I,
jhana factors are number one, seclusion from the hindrance.
right, yeah, the
So
hindrance that
that's the
appears
important
to
one,
be
is to get your
appearing
mind
is
out of the
restlessness.
past and the future and what you want and all of that, and get yourself into the present moment.
Yeah.
Going into that present moment, there is in fact now rapture and sukha, piti and sukha, that's born of that seclusion. Now that we're out of the hindrances, that's great.
Yeah.
What else do you want to do once you've gotten to that state? The answer is let's get the mind fit for work by taking those deep breaths, applying the mind to what we want to apply it to. And then the question for you would be, well, what do I want to apply the mind to? The answer is this present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So do I do metta now, or do I do this now, or do I do that now? We need to wake up to look at that. Look at this confusion about what do I do next.
Mm-hmm.
Because in fact, what to do next is really easy. Stop thinking about what to do next and enjoy doing nothing next.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm getting too first jhana these past few sits. It seems like that the jumping around from one thing to the other seems to be restlessness.
Right? Some people call it monkey mind.
Yeah.
Now that's something, when I first heard of that expression monkey mind, I thought that it was something that they invented in the Goenka retreats. And now later I came to find out that, oh no, that's an old expression. It goes way back in time. The people that noticed that issue about monkey mind or restless, and you pegged it. You've got it. That's exactly right. What do I do next is exactly that restlessness mind.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just keep on
Enjoying doing nothing.
Yeah. All right. I'm not gonna fucking overcomplicate it.
Yes, let's not.
I'll just focus on
Western
taking
thinking, right?
deep
We really
breaths
try to
and
complicate it, and it's not. It's really easy. It's
just
really simple.
just deep breaths and doing nothing. All right. Interestingly, I've had interesting phenomenon. The sensation in my head and neck continues to appear and disappear. I think it really makes a mark when it's a moment of like real okayness, like real equanimity, just like there it is. And in fact, a few nights ago, I woke up from sleep, and while I was going back to sleep, I had a really strong sensation, like as if someone had put two electrical wires together, and it created this big like electrical spark signal. My visual field turned white, and it scared me. It only lasted like a fraction of a second, and I opened my eyes. I was like, "Holy shit!" and then I noticed and then I eventually went back to sleep. But I noticed how I was well, that was cool. Didn't feel like it felt like what I was supposed to do was to leave my attention there, but it caught me by such surprise that it threw me out. So that was interesting. And then
There's four connect.
oh.
So I missed what you said. It's been garbled, and I haven't been able to understand what you were saying. It still
Oh,
says,
okay. What was the last thing
but
you heard?
It's been going on for quite a while.
Oh, really?
But at least now the screen is not frozen.
Okay.
So what were you talking about before?
I was talking about this experience that I had a few nights ago.
Oh, about the electricity or the light that flashed.
Yeah, and then um, so that happened, and then still getting the sensations when I'm breathing. Not every breath, but deep ones. Any idea? Any ideas? I assume it's just like the brain rewiring, but I'm not sure if you have any thoughts.
Hmm. I I would say that if we were going to put it kind of in a succinct few words, uh, to enjoy doing nothing would be the way that you would start to work on removing the restlessness. Because yes, the restless mind wants to do this, it wants to do that, it wants to cover all the bases, literally, and we can also experience that restlessness in the form of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably not at that particular level of anxiety. It's just at the level of the restless mind. So when the mind begins to wander away from the present moment, sati, bring it back and say, no, there's nothing to do. There really is nothing to do. Let me sit here and enjoy that I've got nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That Bashu poem, that's the one I really like. No place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Even the grass does not need your help.
All right, I'm gonna try to live it out.
All right. Well, not all the time, but whenever you remember.
Yeah. So I'll just sit and breathe and do nothing, and that will. I'll get back to you. Oh, I think we're frozen again.